Hi, Sydney. Thank you so much for joining me over here today. And so I want to start by just you would give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are and what you do.
Yeah, of course. My name is Sydney, and my Instagram is Language with Sydney. And I am a language learner and a language teacher. So right now I'm learning Mandarin and Cantonese and dabbling in a few other languages. And I teach English. And most of my days are just spent studying languages and thinking about how I can make language learning more fun and more efficient.
Wow. So with your teaching experience and then your Instagram as well. So I'm going to put that down below in the description here so that people can go over and they can see your account. And you said that you teach language and you teach English, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
ESL.
And do you teach ESL in just online or like I know not in the classroom right now because of everything that's going on, but do you do it like with a school district, or is it just tutoring? Is it just one-to-one or groups? Or what does that
Yeah.
look like?
So I'm doing pretty much everything right now. I am doing tutoring one-on-one with
Okay.
people. I'm doing small classes with other companies. And I also do adult business English classes where I just found the students privately. So yeah,
Okay.
pretty much just anything I can do right now.
A little bit of
And
everything.
yeah, a little bit of everything. Even
Yeah.
teaching local students. I teach like students from China, and then I have local
Okay.
students I teach too, teaching like essay writing and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty much like everything and anything right
Everything.
now.
Okay. Wow. And then with working for students in China, then you must be working like all hours of the day and night with the time difference.
Yeah. Working with
Yeah.
the students in China, I work quite late, which can be a little bit crazy sometimes. I get off
Yeah.
work at like 10 p.m. or like 11. I used to work at like 1 a.m. to like 1:30 or something, and it was
Oh,
just
wow.
really crazy.
But you're also learning Mandarin and Cantonese, so that kind of ties in nicely with that too. Do you get to the students who you teach? Is it mostly just all in English instruction, or do you use a little bit of your Mandarin or Cantonese with them?
So I don't usually like talk to them in Mandarin or
Mm-hmm.
Cantonese because we want to really keep it like immersion for English.
Yeah.
But I think actually my Mandarin and Cantonese skills do come in handy
Mm-hmm.
because my background is also an Asian studies major at university. Yeah, so I have a major in Asian studies and I know a lot, or I try to learn and I'm trying to become more knowledgeable and Asian culture and Chinese culture. So we get to talk a lot about like Chinese culture and the food
Mm-hmm.
and all the stuff like that. So I think that's really where it comes in handy because I can create classes that are very interesting and have very interesting conversations with them about their culture.
Yeah, it sounds like it all fits in very nicely together. I know that was kind of like with my Spanish when I was teaching English, and most of the learners were Spanish speakers. So then they had that Spanish came in similar to that because you want to try to do as much in the language as possible. But it sounds like if you have an immersion program, your students are at like at least past the beginner level to where they can understand a decent amount of English.
The interesting thing is, I've had students who have had zero English and come
Oh.
and do immersion with me. So that just relies really heavily on TPR and using modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And like if we're talking about colors, I would be like, what is your
Mm-hmm.
favorite color? So stuff like that,
Yeah.
using a lot of TPR, have skills like that. So I actually feel that's an interesting thing you brought up there is when should you start using immersion to learn a
Hmm.
language? And I think start from the beginning because you don't need you just need like some sort of a teacher to kind of guide you and help you, but you don't need to have a really high level of proficiency. You could have a low level of proficiency and still successfully do immersion just with the right teachers and the right courses and the right material.
Yeah, and I agree that you can start immersion at any point in the language learning process. I think what it comes down to more so than when to start is really just looking at individual learning styles and preferences.
Mhm.
Because
Yes.
I know that like I just like translation methods, and I
Mhm.
also use immersion methods like reading, writing, speaking, and listening, all of those basically, those are immersion methods. If you're in a country, you're listening and speaking and you're doing all of that. But I also like being able to look at something in another language and something in English and say, okay, this is what this means in my language. I like having that too, even though, there's like translation is not precise because it's not word for word from different languages, but I like that method. And then I know that some people respond better to a full immersion method, and that style works really well for some people. But I wouldn't do that for myself at the very beginning.
Exactly. It's all depends on kind of the person you are and how you enjoy learning. And also, I think when it comes to like a full immersion method, that's actually a really tough method to totally dive into. I think it's good to also do a little bit of grammar on the side because, especially for adults, you could do full immersion, but you might be missing some things. And that's why I think a really holistic approach is the best way to go. Like, do some immersion, do some translation and grammar, and just kind of create it like that. And don't just focus on one way, like, try different ways and divide up your time into different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's the key for pretty much anything. Learning pretty much anything is to find a balance between all of the techniques that you have. And it's just that when you are in a classroom or when you're working with groups, you have to kind of choose a method to use with those students. And it's different than if you're just learning for yourself or you're just teaching someone one-on-one, because then you can personalize it more. So it does depend on so many factors. Are your students who you work with in China, do you work with them mostly one-to-one, or is it in a group setting, or both?
For the ones in China, I've mostly been doing one-on-one with them. I have done a few group ones, but one-on-one seems to be the best so far. Just exactly like you said, I can like really cater to how each individual learner likes to learn. So I have some, like I work with a lot of children in China, and some of the children, they really love games. So anything with a game that can really help them learn. And I have one child who he's very fast paced. He wants to race through everything, and that's just how he works. If we're working on things slowly, then he gets bored and it won't work. We have to go through things fast. And then I have another person, a student I work with in China, and we got to take things slow. And she wants to really talk about the pictures we see on the screen, and she needs time to think. She can't just speak right away. So she needs lots of time. And I was doing classes with both of them together, and then we decided that it would be better if we did separate classes just because of their learning needs are so different.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting too, because I used to be the kind of person who just always preferred private classes because of those accommodations and being able to do things the way that I want to do them. But over the last few years, especially, I've really gravitated towards more of a balance between the two and between group classes as well, because I began to see more of different styles of group classes, especially in online classes where they're very collaborative, like traditional online classes, I guess, not like COVID online classes that are like there's Zoom classes, but the ones where you actually have the discussions and you can type and take your time and respond and do videos. And you probably did your degree recently enough that you had some form of class like that in your university studies?
Probably one month of that.
1 month of that? Okay.
Yeah.
No, my degree was quite a while ago, but these classes that I'm taking now, they are like this, and it was different before. But that style, and then also just in group classes that I take, like with my mentor that I work with, I meet in group. There's sometimes group meetings with other people who are in her programs, and those are really valuable to me, more so than it used to be when I was in a traditional classroom, when there was just someone lecturing and just giving all the information, like the direct instruction, because they're more discussion based, they're more collaborative. So I feel like with the teaching of these languages, like it is definitely an advantage if you can have one-to-one support. Like that is optimal because then you can get exactly what you need. But it's also nice to have a group setting where you can discuss the topics, maybe not as much at the beginner level of a language. Or do you think that that could work into a beginning level language class as well? Or more so in the advanced class once the students have the vocabulary to, and that the basic structures to actually use the language more?
That's a really good question. Because I do like the community setting of the group class where you can like engage with other students and you can do a lot of talking in a group. But sometimes when you're at that really beginner point of the language, that can be it can be very scary having a lot of speakers. And maybe I'll talk about my university experience learning Mandarin. I was in a group setting with tons of other people who were also learning Mandarin. And I just felt like I never had enough time, like with the teacher and enough talking time. And the other students who were in the class with me, some of them were from Hong Kong. Some of them had gone on an exchange to Taiwan or China or a Chinese speaking place. And their Chinese level was way higher than mine. So sometimes I felt like this discussion was all like above my level, and it made me feel a little bit left out. So I think when you're getting a group class, it's trying to make sure all the students are on the same level so that everyone is feeling like they could contribute to the conversation. That would be very, very important, because I know like I've been in a language class where I've been like the lower proficiency compared to the other students. And it's very tough to learn anything when you're scared to talk or you can't even understand what other people are saying. So I think waiting to be in like maybe a higher proficiency and making sure that like your class is your level would be very important.
I think so too. And I think that it's also important to look at the group size of the class because, like you mentioned, within your college classes and the university, they're probably much larger than like what I'm thinking of right now in my group class of just like a few people. And even when I went to Costa Rica, when I studied Spanish over there, we had some groups and they were very small. They were like 4 people. So we really did get a lot of practice and it wasn't so overwhelming. But in my university, it was a large class. So I feel that what you're talking about with how there's not enough time because there's just not enough time for 30 people or 40 people, or sometimes college classes have even like 100 people, and then like you just can't have that within that kind of a setting. But I do think though that all components of teaching and learning, like within the groups and within private study, like within tutoring or within one-to-ones, and also the independent learning side, I think is probably where students progress the most, is how much they do on their own in between classes, or even if they're not taking classes, if they're just studying on their own. Or I mean, even if you're not taking classes, you're still learning from someone. Like even people who completely independent study, they're still using a book, or they're still working with a tutor, or they have a native speaker, like they have someone the knowledge is coming from. But I feel like the independent study part is where all of the real learning happens, because it's the process of doing all of the reading, writing, speaking, and listening in the language. And I know you're really into your study process. You want to share a little bit about just like how you create your study environment? How do you create everything that you do on Instagram? What's like a behind the scenes look at what you do over there?
When I'm studying Chinese, I try to take kind of a relaxed and a structured approach when studying. So structured in a way in which I come up with short-term goals, like monthly goals. I will pick 2 things that I'm going to focus on for the month. So, for example, this month I'm focusing on speaking and I'm focusing on vocabulary in Chinese. So I will set a goal, a number or something. So for vocabulary, my goal is 10 hours of vocabulary practice, which I'm doing with Hacking Chinese platform, where you get to challenge other people to kind of like these studying competitions. And that's really fun. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. So that's my one goal. And my other goal for speaking would be 10 speaking videos, posting 10 videos on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
So once I have that kind of structure and I have that goal that I'm reaching for, what I do daily is a little bit different. Daily, I try to take a more relaxed approach. I look at my mood. What do I feel like doing? Like, do I feel extremely motivated and like I want to spend like 2 hours practicing vocabulary and make 3 speaking videos? I'll do that and it'll be great. But if I'm not feeling great, I'm like, I really just don't feel like studying today. I'm not going to force myself. I'm going to watch a movie in Chinese. I'm going to do 10 minutes of scritter maybe, or writing practice or something easy. And I'm just going to kind of like let my mood dictate my studying rather than like, oh, I have to do this much studying every day and making it like a chore. I feel like when you make it like a chore, you just take the fun out of learning, which then it just makes you not want to do it anymore. But I'm really goal orientated, so I really love finishing my goals, and I don't have that problem of procrastination like other people might have. I get really excited in the beginning of my goals, and I'll get a lot done in the beginning, and I'll actually probably slowly kind of die off near the end, and I'll do less and less practicing and studying. But it's okay. I'll make it to my goal, and then it'll be like I restart the next month. Okay, pick 2 new goals, and I get excited for my 2 new goals. And I study a lot in the beginning of the month, and I slowly decline. And that's just how I like to do it, because it just makes me feel motivated. And also it's just like a less stressful way to study language, because I feel like if I made like 5 different goals or 4 goals every month, that would be too overwhelming. Like if I'm doing speaking, listening, reading, and writing every single month, that's a lot to focus on.
Yeah.
So I think like narrowing it down a little bit definitely helps me.
So do you think that as you're doing, like if you choose either speaking or reading or writing or speaking, if you choose just 2 of those each month, do you think you're only using those 2, or do you think that the other 2 are integrated in there a little bit?
Oh, for sure. So the other 2 are definitely integrated in there. And some days I'll do something totally different. Like I'll just do some listening practice where when my actual goal is like speaking and vocabulary. I just try to like focus on the two ones, and then if I feel like doing other things, I will. Like I'm not really hard on myself. And also kind of like what you were saying, like the other skills are also integrated in there. So when I'm doing this app called Scritter, I'm doing the vocabulary.
Scritter, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I like this app a lot. So I'm also doing, I'm learning the vocabulary words, but I'm also doing writing. I'm learning the order, the stroke order. I'm also doing some listening because the app reads to you, and a little bit of speaking because there's example sentences, and I like to read the reading and speaking because I'm reading the example sentences. So I feel like it is kind of just like you integrate everything together.
Everything. Yeah. I think so too, and I think that there is definitely, I do see, reason to focus on one or the other, because even within my course setup, like with my Linguist Dojo, I did separate it into those 4 components. But the reason I asked that was this, that we're going to that integration, is that like even though I separate that too, it still has all those other pieces in there. And I just feel like that's an important point to mention, because a lot of people think that like, oh, I'm just going to do speaking, or I'm just going to do listening, or just reading, or just writing. And you can do that as a focus, but it's also important to be aware that the other aspects are there. Like doing one of them improves the others as well. It's just also possible to focus on one to improve that one specifically. Like if you did a dictation exercise and you wanted to practice, you're listening and you're but you're writing too. If you're like listening and writing what you hear, you're also writing, even though you're practicing your listening skills. So I just think that that is something that's so often overlooked, or people trying to figure out exactly, like, trying to compartmentalize everything.
And I think like combining the listening and reading and all of that together, it makes for a better learning experience.
It's immersion,
especially
pretty much.
When you're listening or you're watching something in, like when I'm watching videos in Chinese, I'll always turn on the subtitles so I can get a little bit of reading in. And then also it helps me understand the whole video better too. So I think, yeah, I like that, adding, using both at the same time.
It's all of it. And then, of course, having a focus is helpful because it's just,
Mm.
you need to know where you're going. You have to have some kind of a goal to lead you toward that. And I think it's also so interesting that I'm listening to how you set up your goals, and then mine, it's similar in that I have language goals within each of my languages, but I don't have monthly, sometimes I'll have monthly goals, and sometimes I work with people and I teach, like, okay, let's set out all those goals. But realistically, I have just like lifetime goals and then I make progress toward each of them. Like, am I going to continue my progress with those goals? And I just have it set up to where I can, like, since I'm studying multiple languages, I'll say, like, okay, I want to study right now. I'm going to do the French that I need to do this week, or I'm going to do the Mandarin that I need to do this week. And it's not always one language. Like, I allow myself to just choose between those. So that's kind of how I do with your one language, with those language. And it's a slower process. It's much slower because of all, like, the languages. Whereas if you just are learning one, but I think you're also learning, well, you're learning Mandarin and Cantonese. They're the same writing structure, so it's similar. But I think that's also interesting because it's something that people often think that, oh, you're learning so many languages. How are you doing all of that? It's so difficult just to learn one. It's a different kind of process because it does take more time. Like, you can do it. And for me, it's like the process of just keeping myself entertained, like how you make it fun for yourself. I get bored of one language, and I've found ways to, like, integrate my French and Spanish and, like, do all these different things because that's what keeps me going, and that's my process. So that's why I never want to teach people, like, do it this way, and even tell people, like, you have to do these kind of goals and do it this way. It's like, how can we find what works for you?
It's different for everyone how they like to do it. And actually, when you said you can get a little bit bored or tired of, like, one language, I totally feel that too. And I do dabble in a few other languages actually to entertain myself. And when I get kind of tired or bored of studying Mandarin or Cantonese. So what I actually like to do is, for my monthly goals, I usually get them done in 3 weeks. So even though I have a month time schedule, I get them done in 3 weeks. And that last week, I allow myself to dabble in other languages. For example,
you reward yourself with more studying.
Yeah, it's so funny. I just love studying. So I know for some people who don't like studying, they're like, what? How do you do that? But I just love it so much. Yeah. So I finished last month, I finished my Mandarin goals, and I actually went beyond my Mandarin goals. I was supposed to listen to 20 hours of Chinese, and I ended up listening to 25. So I was, like, super happy with myself. So I decided I'm going to take a Vietnamese class, and I took a Vietnamese class online, and it was a lot of fun. And it was just something to, like, kind of refresh my mind, learn something different. Like, I like to, like, dabble and play with other languages too, because it's just, that entertains me, and that kind of keeps my language learning exciting and fun. And I think it's okay to do that, but also to be realistic and to understand, like, because I do see the opposites of, so people like studying so many languages and they expect to be fluent in, like, all of them, and you got to be realistic. It is going to take you longer. The more languages you choose to study, the longer it's going to take you to become fluent in all those languages, because it takes time, a lot of time.
Yeah, and that's completely true. And I think that there is, if you're learning on your own, then there is, and when I say that, I mean not taking college classes, because college classes are structured, at least here in the States, they're structured to where they take 3 years to do the first, like, the foundation of the language. So it's not possible, really, unless you do something creative, to go through all of those courses in fewer than 3 years. And that's part of the reason I have my languages kind of integrated in this, even the languages I haven't started yet, is because I've looked at those timelines and I know that I like to study that way in those classes. And I can stack them that way, like get to, pass the beginning ones and then start another one and then kind of like stack them up. But so in that way, it's almost like it's kind of saving time, because it's not like starting a language, finishing it, and then ending another one, or finishing it and starting another one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it can, but it is slower than, let's say, like if you were to go and study in China for a year, you could learn that language pretty fluently for a year if you did nothing but study it and you were immersed in it every day over there. So it's just a matter of like where all of the effort and work is being dispersed.
Another thing I would like to kind of mention is I never feel like I'm finished studying. Like some people think, okay, like I'm going to start studying Chinese and then in 4 years I'll be done, I'll be fluent, and I go to the next one. I'm never going to be done. I'm going to continue to study. There's no cap to like, oh, I'm this level, we're done. Like this is like a lifelong journey for me. And like if I did it that way, I would never learn another language.
Yeah, you'd never be done. That's why I had to start my other ones that I want to learn, because I was like, I'm never going to be done learning Spanish. Like I felt like I had to achieve some kind of level of fluency, and I do have a level of fluency within it, but there's always going to be more to it. Like I want to read more advanced novels and more, just use it more. And there's all of those levels. And that's where I think it's really important to decide what your goals are for a language, because my Spanish goals are much higher than any of my other languages. Then, of course, English is higher up there because that's my native language. But Spanish, and then the other languages are there, but I don't intend to necessarily take all of them to that same level, to degree level. You have to decide what is more important for you, having one language that you have, like whether you do a degree or not, whether you do like a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or even a doctorate in the language, or you just study it on your own and still achieve a very high level. You just have to decide what it is you want with it.
Exactly. You have to decide, what are your goals? Do you want to be like completely fluent? Are you just doing this for fun? And maybe you just want to be able to order something in a restaurant.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's completely fine.
Yeah, that's true. Arabic is my fun language, but it's been like that's like how your Vietnamese is like one that I kind of dabble in, that I don't really know where I intend to go with it, but that just interests me for some reason that I'm not really sure what it is. But it's like, there's like that, and then of course there's like Spanish that I'm going to keep going through school, in degrees with, but there's just those polar opposites of the levels of language. But yeah, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up, but there will be another video over on your channel, so those of you who made it all the way to the end of this video, you can head on over to Sydney's YouTube channel, which is also in the description. And yeah, let us know if you have anything to add to our conversation in the comments down below. And Sydney, is there anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
I just want to thank you for inviting me to come and talk with you. It was very interesting, and yeah.
I agree. Yeah, this was a great conversation and a great example of how you can have a discussion-based learning, like in a discussion in a group. Like this is the kind of conversation that I was talking about in group learning that really takes learning to that next level in discussion just like this one. I will see you guys next time and over on Sydney's channel.